Bullies messed with the quiet girl. Huge mistake. 1 week later, she made them beg for forgiveness. The morning fog still clung to the ground like a thick grey blanket when Maya Chen first approached the imposing brick facade of Jefferson High School. The September air carried a chill that made her pull her plain grey hoodie tighter around her shoulders, though the cold she felt had little to do with the weather. This was her 5th school in 4 years, and each time the knot in her stomach grew tighter, the weight on her shoulders heavier. Her mother had promised this would be the last move, that Riverside, Pennsylvania would be their permanent home now that she'd secured a position as head of emergency medicine at the regional medical facility. But Maya had heard such promises before. At 17, Maya had perfected the art of invisibility. Her jet-black hair was always pulled back in a practical ponytail that required no maintenance throughout the day. Her wardrobe consisted entirely of dark jeans and unremarkable hoodies in shades of grey and black, carefully chosen to blend into any crowd. She walked with measured steps, not too fast to draw attention as eager, not too slow to appear defiant. Her posture was deliberately neutral, shoulders slightly hunched to minimize her presence, though beneath the baggy clothing lay a frame honed by 5 years of rigorous training that had transformed her into something far more formidable than her appearance suggested. The main hallway of Jefferson High buzzed with the familiar chaos of a Tuesday morning. Groups of students clustered around lockers, their laughter echoing off the polished linoleum floors. Maya navigated through them like a ghost, her dark eyes cataloguing exits, noting which students moved with the confidence of social dominance, which ones pressed themselves against the walls trying to disappear. She'd learned to read these dynamics quickly, a survival skill honed through too many first days. Her first few classes passed without incident. She answered when called upon, her responses brief but correct, delivered in a voice deliberately soft and unremarkable. Teachers nodded approvingly at the new transfer student who seemed studious and well-behaved. Classmates barely registered her presence, which was exactly what Maya intended. In AP Biology, she chose a seat in the 3rd row from the back, close enough to appear engaged, but far enough to avoid being memorable. In English literature, she took notes in small, neat handwriting, her pen moving steadily across the page, even as her peripheral awareness tracked every movement in the room. The cafeteria at Jefferson High was a sprawling space with fluorescent lights that cast harsh shadows across round tables that could seat 8, but usually held established groups of 4 or 6. The smell of reheated pizza and industrial-strength cleaning solution permeated the air. Maya had purchased a simple lunch, a turkey sandwich, an apple, and a bottle of water, and found an empty table in the far corner, positioned so she could see both the main entrance and the emergency exit near the kitchen. She was 3 bites into her sandwich when the shadow fell across her table. Maya didn't need to look up to know that her carefully crafted anonymity had failed. She could tell from the way conversations at nearby tables quieted, from the shift in the air that preceded confrontation. When she finally raised her eyes, she found herself looking at a broad chest covered by a Jefferson High basketball jersey. Derek Walsh stood 6 feet 3 inches tall, with shoulders that suggested years of weight training and a jaw that looked like it had been carved from granite. His hair was cut in a military style that emphasized the sharp angles of his face, and his brown eyes held the casual arrogance of someone who had never met a situation he couldn't dominate through sheer physical presence. Behind him stood 2 others. Connor, short and wiry, with nervous energy that made his eyes dart constantly around the room, and Tyler, tall and lean, with a calculating smirk that suggested he was the strategic mind behind whatever petty cruelties they inflicted. "Well, well, newcomer," Derek announced as he dropped into the seat across from her, the chair groaning under his weight. The movement was deliberate, invasive, designed to establish dominance. "Name's Derek Walsh. This is my territory, my regulations." Maya's fingers stilled on her sandwich. She could feel the weight of dozens of eyes on their table now, students sensing drama like sharks scenting blood in the water. She took a careful breath, controlling the immediate spike of adrenaline that her body produced in response to the threat. 5 years of training had taught her that the first response to confrontation should always be de-escalation. "Pleasure to meet you," she said, keeping her voice level and meeting his eyes briefly before looking down again. "I'm Maya." "Maya," Derek repeated, rolling the name around in his mouth like he was tasting wine. His friends snickered, and she could hear the barely contained eagerness in their breathing. They were anticipating sport. "Where'd you come from?" "Philadelphia." The word hung in the air between them. Connor immediately pounced on it, his voice high and mocking. "Philadelphia? So you think you're superior to us small-town folk just because you're from the big city?" Maya felt her jaw tighten imperceptibly. She'd encountered this dynamic before, the assumption that coming from a larger city meant she looked down on smaller communities. It was a useful weapon for bullies, turning potential allies against the newcomer before friendships could form. "I don't think that," Maya responded quietly, taking another small bite of her sandwich, though her appetite had evaporated the moment Derek sat down. "But I believe you do." Derek leaned forward, his elbows on the table, invading her space further. His cologne was overwhelming, something expensive and aggressive that made her want to lean back, though she held her position. "Listen, sweetheart. We operate on a straightforward system here. Newcomers demonstrate respect, particularly those from major cities who act like they're too sophisticated for us." The use of sweetheart made Maya's hands clench beneath the table. It was calculated disrespect, designed to diminish her, to establish that she was not a person but a thing to be toyed with. She could feel the familiar cold settling into her chest, the icy calm that preceded violence. But she had made a promise to her mother. Dr. Lisa Chen had been so hopeful about this fresh start, so eager to leave behind the complications that Maya's reputation had created in Philadelphia. "I don't want any conflict," she said, pushing back her chair to stand. The movement was smooth, controlled, though Derek wouldn't recognize the perfect balance in her stance, the way her weight was distributed to allow for instant movement in any direction. Tyler's hand came down on her shoulder before she could take a step. It was meant to be firm, controlling, but Maya felt how he unconsciously pulled back at the last second, some primitive part of his brain warning him that something about her posture was dangerous. Still, he pressed down, keeping her in place. "Where do you think you're going?" His breath was hot against her ear, and she could smell the energy drink on his breath. "We haven't finished our conversation yet." Maya turned her head slowly to look at Tyler, and something in her eyes made him swallow hard, though he didn't remove his hand. "What exactly do you want?" Her voice carried a different quality now, still quiet, but with an edge like a blade being slowly drawn from its sheath. Derek stood, using his height advantage to loom over her. "Just a small token of respect," he sneered, and she could see the enjoyment in his eyes, the pleasure he took from this ritual of dominance. "Let's say $10 daily for protection. You know, in a new school, all kinds of accidents can happen to a solitary girl." The threat was clear, delivered with the confidence of someone who had run this exact scenario dozens of times before. Maya slowly studied their faces, cataloging weaknesses with the clinical detachment her sensei had taught her. Derek favored his right side, probably an old sports injury in his left knee. Connor's nervous energy meant he would be fast but predictable, telegraphing his moves. Tyler was the dangerous one, patient and observant, but his grip on her shoulder revealed underdeveloped forearms that would make his punches lack real power. "I need time to consider it," she finally said, the words tasting like ash in her mouth. Derek's smile widened, mistaking her response for capitulation. "Naturally. You have until tomorrow. Oh, and Maya," he leaned closer, close enough that she could see the small scar on his chin, probably from a childhood accident. Don't even consider tattling. The faculty here adores us. My father sponsors the basketball team, pays for new uniforms every year, funded the renovation of the gymnasium. After they departed, Maya remained seated for several more minutes, her fists clenched beneath the table hard enough that her nails left crescents in her palms. She could have ended it immediately. One accurate strike to Derek's floating ribs, angled upward to drive the breath from his lungs. A simple arm lock on Tyler, using his own grip against him. A swift kick to Connor's leading knee, exploiting his forward-leaning stance. The sequences played out in her mind with the clarity of mental rehearsal, each movement precise and devastating. But her promise to her mother held her back like chains made of love and obligation. The walk home took 17 minutes through tree-lined streets, where identical suburban houses sat behind manicured lawns. Maya's mind raced through calculations and scenarios. $10 daily meant $50 a week, $200 a month, over $2,000 for the entire academic year. But she knew boys like Derek. The money was just the beginning. Once she paid, she would be marked as weak, as prey. The demands would escalate. Maybe they would want her to do their homework. Maybe they would make her buy them lunch. Maybe worse things, things that made her stomach turn to consider. Their new house was a modest, two-story colonial with blue shutters and a wraparound porch that her mother had fallen in love with at first sight. Dr. Lisa Chen was already in the kitchen when Maya entered, still wearing her scrubs from the hospital, exhaustion written in the lines around her eyes, but managing a warm smile for her daughter. "How was school, sweetheart?" Lisa asked, stirring a pot of soup on the stove. The kitchen smelled like ginger and star anise, her mother's comfort food from her own childhood. "It went fine," Maya lied, the words coming easily. "Just a typical first day." Her mother turned to study her, and Maya could feel the weight of that analytical gaze. Over the years, they had developed the ability to read each other's unspoken thoughts, a survival mechanism from when it had been just the two of them against the world, after Maya's father had died in a car accident when she was 12. That tragedy had led Maya to her first self-defense class, her mother terrified of losing the only family she had left. "Made any friends?" Lisa asked, though her tone suggested she suspected the answer. "Too early to say." Lisa opened her mouth as if to probe further, then closed it again. "If there are any issues, you know you can—" "Everything's fine, Mom, really." Maya forced a smile, hating herself for the deception, but knowing that the truth would only lead to another move, another school, another fresh start that would eventually sour. That night, Maya lay in her narrow bed, staring at the ceiling where the previous owner had left glow-in-the-dark stars that still held a faint luminescence. Through her window, she could hear the distant sound of a dog barking and the occasional car passing on the quiet street. But in her mind, she was back in Philadelphia, in the dojo where Sensei Rodriguez had transformed her from a frightened 12-year-old into something more. She remembered her first day there, how she'd stood at the edge of the mat, trembling after 3 older girls had cornered her after school, shoving her into a chain-link fence until her back was cross-hatched with marks. Sensei Rodriguez had taken one look at her and understood everything. He'd started her training that very day, teaching her that true strength came not from the ability to hurt, but from the discipline to know when not to fight. 5 years of training, 6 days a week, sometimes twice a day during summer breaks. She'd learned Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for ground fighting, Muay Thai for strikes, wrestling for takedowns, and boxing for footwork and hand speed. Her body had been forged into a weapon, but more importantly, her mind had been sharpened into something that could remain calm in the face of violence. 28 sanctioned fights in the Pennsylvania Junior Mixed Martial Arts Circuit. 26 victories, most by submission, a few by knockout. the two losses coming early in her career when she was still learning to channel aggression into technique. Wednesday morning arrived grey and drizzling, the kind of persistent rain that seemed to seep through clothing and chill the bones. Maya had barely entered the school building, her shoes squeaking on the wet floor, when Derek and his friends materialized from an alcove near the staircase. They moved with the coordinated precision of pack hunters, Connor flanking left, Tyler right, Derek directly in front. "So, have you made your decision?" Derek asked, cutting straight to the point. The hallway was crowded with students heading to first period, but they gave Derek's group a wide berth, like water flowing around a stone. Maya squared her shoulders, meeting his eyes directly this time. "I won't be paying you." The transformation in Derek's face was immediate and frightening. The casual arrogance vanished, replaced by something darker, more primitive. His jaw clenched, the muscles in his neck standing out like cables. "What did you just say?" "I said no." The words were clear, carrying through the hallway. Several students stopped to watch, sensing the electricity in the air. For several seconds they stared at each other. Maya could see Derek processing this unexpected defiance, his brain struggling to reconcile the small, quiet girl with someone who would dare refuse him. Then he laughed, but it was a cold, humorless sound that made nearby students hurry toward their classrooms. "You know what, sweetheart? I hoped you'd be reasonable about this." He shrugged, the gesture elaborate and theatrical. "But if you want to play the hero..." What followed became a systematic campaign of torment that tested every ounce of Maya's self-control. Between first and second period, Connor executed a perfect accidental collision, his shoulder catching her as she rounded a corner, sending her books and papers flying across the hallway floor. The impact was calculated to look incidental to any watching teachers, but carried enough force to bruise. "Whoops!" Connor smirked as Maya knelt to gather her belongings, other students stepping around her, some sympathetic but unwilling to help and draw Derek's attention. "My mistake." When she bent to retrieve her biology notebook, Connor's muddy shoe came down on it, grinding dirt into the pages where she'd carefully drawn cellular structures. The message was clear. Nothing of hers was safe. Nothing was beyond their reach. Between second and third period, Tyler's ambush was more direct. He waited until the hallway was relatively empty, then drove his shoulder into her as she walked past, slamming her into a row of lockers. The impact rattled her teeth and sent pain shooting through her shoulder blade. Her body's trained response was immediate. Shift weight, redirect his momentum, use his own force to send him face first into the metal. But she gritted her teeth and absorbed the blow instead. "Watch your step!" Tyler barked as he walked away, not even bothering to look back, so confident was he that she posed no threat. By lunchtime, the entire school seemed aware that the new girl had defied Derek Walsh. Whispers followed Maya through the lunch line, some admiring her courage, others predicting her imminent social destruction. She sat at the same corner table, though now it felt less like a strategic position and more like isolation. Derek approached with an entourage this time. Half the basketball team flanked him, their jerseys a wall of athletic privilege. The cafeteria fell silent in waves, conversations dying as students turned to watch the confrontation. "Word is," Derek announced, his voice carrying across the entire space, "the new girl doesn't want to respect our customs, thinks she's too good for our rules." Maya kept her eyes on her lunch tray, though every muscle in her body was coiled for action. She could feel the weight of hundreds of eyes, the collective held breath of an audience anticipating spectacle. "Derek, please," Maya said softly, though the words cost her. "I just want to get through school peacefully. And I just want you to understand your position." He leaned down, his face inches from hers, and she could see the slight sheen of sweat on his forehead, smell the mint gum he was chewing. "You see, when someone ignores my requests, it makes me look weak. And I can't have that." What happened next would become legendary in Jefferson High folklore, told and retold with increasing embellishment, though the truth needed no exaggeration. Derek picked up her lunch tray with deliberate slowness, tilting it so the hot vegetable soup poured onto her lap in a steady stream. The liquid soaked through her jeans immediately, scalding her thighs. Chunks of carrots and potatoes scattered across the floor, and the smell of beef broth filled her nostrils. "Oh no, what a disaster," Derek said with exaggerated concern, his voice dripping with false sympathy. The cafeteria erupted in laughter. Someone raised a phone to record, and within seconds, dozens of devices were pointed at her. Maya could hear the individual voices in the crowd, some genuinely amused, others uncomfortable, but laughing to avoid becoming targets themselves. Maya sat motionless as the soup spread across her jeans, feeling each drop seep through the fabric. Inside her, something fundamental shifted. It wasn't rage. She'd learned to control rage years ago. This was colder, more precise, like tumblers clicking into place in a lock. She was done hiding. "What are you waiting for?" Derek taunted, emboldened by her stillness. "Clean it up. Get on your hands and knees and clean up your mess." Maya stood slowly, soup dripping from her jeans onto the floor in thick drops that splattered on the linoleum. The laughter grew louder, but she didn't hear it anymore. Her world had narrowed to Derek's face, to the cruel satisfaction in his eyes. "You just made a serious error," she said, her voice cutting through the noise like a blade through silk. Derek's laughter was genuine this time, delighted by what he perceived as empty bravado. "And what are you going to do about it? Run to the principal? Call your mommy? Post about it online?" Maya didn't respond. She simply grabbed her backpack, its bottom now stained with soup, and walked out of the cafeteria. Each step left a wet footprint behind, and the laughter followed her down the hallway until she pushed through the door of the girls' restroom. In the relative quiet of the bathroom, Maya stood before the mirror and examined her reflection. Soup had splashed up onto her hoodie, leaving dark stains across the grey fabric. Her jeans were ruined, the smell of beef broth overwhelming in the small space. Her hands trembled as she pulled paper towels from the dispenser, but it wasn't from fear or humiliation. It was from the effort of maintaining control, of not walking back into that cafeteria and demonstrating exactly what 5 years of training could do to untrained teenagers. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through her contacts until she found the number she needed. It rang twice before a familiar voice answered. "Sensei Rodriguez, this is Maya Chen." "Maya?" His voice was warm with genuine pleasure. "How's the new school treating you?" "Not great." She kept her voice steady, clinical. "I have a problem with some local bullies." There was a pause on the line. Sensei Rodriguez had known Maya since that first day when she'd stood at the edge of his dojo, a frightened 12-year-old with bruises on her back and determination in her eyes. He'd watched her transform from victim to warrior, had held her hand after her first loss, had raised it in victory after her state championship win. "Tell me everything," he said simply. Maya provided a brief but complete summary from Derek's initial approach to the soup incident. She could hear Sensei's breathing change as she spoke, the controlled inhale and exhale that meant he was processing, thinking. "Listen carefully, young one," he said when she finished. "I know your mother wanted you to keep your skills hidden, and there's wisdom in that. But sometimes secrets become weapons that are turned against us." "What do you mean?" "If you continue letting them push you around, they'll only become more aggressive. Boys like that are like sharks. They become frenzied at the scent of blood. They only understand strength." Maya pressed her forehead against the cool tile wall. "But my mother." "Your mother wants you safe. Sometimes safety requires action. But remember what I taught you. If you decide to act, do it intelligently. Not at school if you can avoid it, not in front of witnesses who might misinterpret what they see. And Maya," his voice became stern, "no permanent damage. You're not 12 anymore. You have the skill to seriously hurt someone. With that power comes responsibility. I remember your teaching, Sensei. Good. And Maya, no matter what happens, you have the right to defend yourself. Don't let anyone make you feel guilty for refusing to be a victim. After ending the call, Maya spent the rest of the lunch period in the bathroom, cleaning what she could of the stains and planning her next move. By the time the bell rang for fifth period, she had made her decision. She would give Derek one chance to end this peacefully, away from the crowd that fed his need for dominance. If he refused, she would end it her way. The remainder of the school day passed in a blur. Teachers noticed her stained clothing but said nothing, though she caught sympathetic glances from Mrs. Patterson in history class. Students whispered when she passed, and she heard fragments of conversation. Did you see the video? Derek totally destroyed her. She just sat there, probably crying in the bathroom all lunch. Maya attended each class, took notes, participated when called upon, all while her mind ran through scenarios and contingencies. She stayed after school in the library, ostensibly studying for a biology test, but actually watching the parking lot through the window, timing how long basketball practice lasted, noting when players left alone versus in groups. The library was nearly empty by 4 o'clock, just Maya and Mrs. Hendricks, the elderly librarian who seemed to exist in a state of perpetual disapproval. Maya packed her belongings slowly, watching through the window as the last of the basketball team filed out of the gymnasium. She waited another 30 minutes until she saw Derek emerge alone, his hair still damp from the shower, gym bag slung over his shoulder. The parking lot was nearly deserted when Maya intercepted him. The asphalt was still damp from the morning rain, reflecting the orange glow of the setting sun. Derek's car, a black BMW that screamed of parental indulgence, was parked in the far corner. "Derek!" she called out, her voice carrying across the empty space. He turned and his face split into a predatory grin when he saw her. "Well, look who's here. Soup Girl's back for seconds." Maya walked toward him, noting how he automatically shifted his stance, squaring up as if preparing for confrontation despite his casual demeanor. Good, she thought. Some part of him recognizes danger, even if his conscious mind dismisses it. "I need to discuss what happened today in the cafeteria," she said, stopping about 6 feet away, just outside of immediate striking range, but close enough for conversation. "What about it?" "I thought it was pretty amusing. Got about 200 views already." He pulled out his phone, waving it at her. "Want to see the comments? They're hilarious. For you, perhaps, not for me." Derek pocketed his phone and stepped closer, using his height advantage to its fullest. At 6'3", he towered over Maya's 5'3" frame. The difference was almost comical, and she could see him relishing it. "Listen up, little girl," he said, his voice dropping to a growl. "I tried to be nice, gave you a simple choice. Pay up and live peacefully, but you wanted to play hero. Now it's going to be the hard way." "The hard way?" Maya asked, genuinely curious about what he imagined that would entail. "Tomorrow, the entire school will know you're just another loser from Philadelphia who couldn't hack it here. I'll make sure that video goes viral. Soup Girl will be your name for the rest of the year. Every day will be worse than today until you either pay up with interest or transfer schools." There was a flicker in Maya's eyes, a shift that Derek noticed but misinterpreted as fear. "You're frightened," he said with satisfaction. "Good. You should be. Too late now, sweetheart. Should have thought of that earlier." Maya took a deep breath, centering herself the way Sensei Rodriguez had taught her. "You know, Derek," she said in a calm, almost gentle voice, "I have a proposal." He raised an eyebrow. "A proposal? You're in no position to offer anything." "One-on-one, right here, right now. If you win, I'll pay you. Not $10 daily, but 20. I'll do whatever you say for the rest of the year." Derek's surprise was genuine. He actually took a step back, studying her as if seeing her for the first time. "Are you serious? You want to fight me? I want to end this once and for all." Derek burst into laughter, the sound echoing off the brick walls of the school building. "Little girl, I've been playing basketball since I was 8. My dad hired a personal trainer when I was 12. I can bench press 220 pounds. I've been in more fights than I can count." He looked her up and down with disdain. "You look like a strong wind could knock you over." "Then you have nothing to worry about," Maya said simply. Something in her tone made Derek examine her more closely. She stood perfectly still, her arms hanging loosely at her sides, but there was something about her posture that seemed different from earlier. The scared girl who had sat frozen while soup poured into her lap was gone. In her place stood someone who radiated quiet confidence. "Fine," he said finally, shrugging off his Letterman jacket. "But no rules. Anything goes." "Anything goes," she agreed. They moved to the center of the parking lot, giving themselves room. The asphalt was rough beneath their feet, with small rocks and debris that would make footing treacherous if someone wasn't careful. Derek pulled off his jacket, revealing a black t-shirt that struggled to contain his muscular torso. Years in the gym had clearly paid off. Broad shoulders, thick chest, arms that looked like they could snap Maya in half. Maya simply removed her soup-stained hoodie, folding it carefully and placing it on the ground. In just her t-shirt, the difference in their sizes became even more pronounced. Derek probably outweighed her by 100 pounds. All of it muscle. "Last chance to back down," he offered, rolling his shoulders and cracking his knuckles. "Thanks, but no." "Your funeral." Derek didn't hesitate. He lunged forward with the confidence of someone who had never lost a physical confrontation, his right fist flying straight at her face with enough force to break her nose and probably knock her unconscious. It was a haymaker, all power and no finesse, telegraphed from the moment his shoulder dipped. What happened next shattered Derek's entire understanding of reality. Maya didn't dodge. That would have been too obvious. Instead, she shifted a half step to her right, a movement so small and precise that Derek didn't even register it. Her left foot slid back, her hips rotated, and his fist sailed through the space where her head had been a millisecond before. Simultaneously, she brought up her left forearm in a perfect deflection, not meeting his force head-on, but redirecting it, using his own momentum against him. Derek stumbled forward, off balance, his brain trying to process how he had missed. But Maya was already moving. Her right hand shot forward like a piston, every muscle from her toe to her shoulder engaged in perfect kinetic chain. 5 years of training, thousands of repetitions on heavy bags and pads, countless hours perfecting the mechanics of power generation, all of it focused into a strike that lasted less than a quarter of a second. Her fist connected with his solar plexus with surgical precision, hitting the nerve cluster just below his sternum. It wasn't just the impact, though that was considerable, but the placement and angle that made it devastating. The strike compressed his diaphragm, disrupted the nerve signals to his breathing muscles, and sent a shockwave through his internal organs. Derek's forward momentum stopped instantly. His eyes widened in shock and pain, his mouth opening in a silent scream as his body forgot how to breathe. He doubled over, his hands clutching his stomach, and then his legs gave out. He dropped to his knees on the wet asphalt, gasping like a fish pulled from water, his face already turning red from oxygen deprivation. Maya stood over him, not even breathing hard. There was no strain in her posture, no sign that she had just dropped someone nearly twice her size. She watched him struggle for breath with clinical detachment, counting the seconds in her head. The strike would incapacitate him for about 30 to 45 seconds. Painful, terrifying, but not dangerous if she had calculated correctly. "What? How?" Derek managed to croak out between desperate attempts to inhale. "First rule of fighting," Maya said softly, crouching down so they were at eye level. "Never underestimate your opponent. Second rule, never telegraph your strikes. Third rule, Technique beats strength every time. Derek tried to push himself up, but his legs wouldn't cooperate. The human body's response to a proper solar plexus strike was involuntary and overwhelming. His diaphragm was in full spasm, his intercostal muscles confused, his autonomic nervous system in chaos. You box? He wheezed. Not boxing. Maya stood and took a few steps back, giving him space to recover. Mixed martial arts. 5 years of intensive training at one of Philadelphia's best gyms. Pennsylvania State Junior Champion, under 16 division. 28 fights, 26 victories, most by submission. As his breathing slowly returned to normal, Derek's eyes widened in genuine horror. He managed to push himself to his feet, though he stayed hunched over, one arm wrapped protectively around his midsection. But you're so small. Size is largely irrelevant when technique is involved. You threw a haymaker with your entire body weight behind it. I redirected that force and struck a nerve cluster with precision. If I had wanted to truly hurt you, that strike would have been aimed 2 inches lower and angled upward. It would have ruptured your liver, possibly your spleen. You'd be in the ICU right now instead of just struggling to breathe. The casual way she delivered this information, like a teacher explaining a math problem, made Derek's blood run cold. He looked at her again, really looked, and finally saw what his ego had prevented him from seeing before. The way she stood, perfectly balanced on the balls of her feet, the loose readiness in her shoulders, the calm assessment in her eyes that spoke of someone who had been in real fights, who had faced opponents trying to actually hurt her and emerged victorious. I moved here hoping to live a normal life, Maya continued, her voice taking on a harder edge. I'm tired of people being afraid of me, tired of being known only as that girl who fights. My mom asked me to hide my abilities, to try to be just another teenager, and I agreed. I wanted to make friends based on who I am, not what I can do. Derek remained silent, still processing the complete reversal of his worldview. But you didn't give me that opportunity, Maya said, stepping closer. Despite the height difference, despite his greater mass, Derek felt himself shrinking before her. You saw what you thought was an easy target, a small, quiet girl from out of town with no friends to protect her. You thought you could intimidate me, humiliate me, extract money from me like I was an ATM machine for your ego. Look, I didn't know, Derek began. Of course you didn't know. That's the point. You never know who someone really is, what they've been through, what they're capable of. You make assumptions based on appearance and then act on those assumptions without considering the consequences. Maya reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. Derek flinched, thinking she was about to record him in his defeated state, but she simply checked the time. Here's what's going to happen, she said, her voice carrying absolute authority. Tomorrow morning, you're going to apologize to me in front of everyone. A real apology, not some half-hearted mumbled words. You're going to take responsibility for what you did. And if I don't? Derek asked, though there was no real defiance in his voice. Maya shrugged. Then tomorrow at lunch, I'll give a demonstration of what I can really do. With witnesses, on video, in full view of the entire school. How do you think your basketball teammates will react when they see their captain submitted by a girl half his size in under 30 seconds? What will your father say when the video of his son tapping out goes viral? What will college scouts think when they see that the mighty Derek Walsh got destroyed by someone who weighs 120 pounds? Derek's face went pale. His entire identity was built on being physically dominant, on being the alpha. If that image was shattered publicly, devastatingly, on video that would live forever on the internet, everything he had built would crumble. All right, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I'll do it. Smart choice. Maya picked up her hoodie and started to walk away, then paused and turned back. Oh, and Derek. If you or your friends so much as glance at me or any other student the wrong way, I'll know, and our next conversation won't be this pleasant." She walked away, leaving Derek alone in the parking lot. He stood there for a long time, rubbing his stomach and trying to reconcile what had just happened with everything he thought he knew about the world. The next morning, the entire school was buzzing with rumors. Someone had seen Derek and Maya in the parking lot. Someone else claimed they heard Derek got into a fight with some kids from Westfield. The stories were wild, contradictory, and nowhere close to the truth. Maya arrived at school early, taking her usual route through the main hallway. She could feel the eyes on her, the whispers following in her wake, but she kept her expression neutral. She had learned long ago that reputation was a weapon that could cut both ways. At 7:45, 15 minutes before first period, Derek Walsh walked up to her in the main hallway. The space was packed with students heading to class, and conversations died in waves as people noticed him approaching the girl he had humiliated just yesterday. Derek stopped in front of her, and Maya could see the war playing out on his face, his pride fighting against his fear. For a moment, she thought he might back out, might try to salvage his ego with some half measure. But then his shoulders dropped, and he met her eyes. "Maya," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "I'm sorry for what I did yesterday in the cafeteria. It was wrong, cruel, and inexcusable. I was a complete jerk, and you didn't deserve any of it." The hallway was so quiet, you could hear the fluorescent lights humming overhead. Students stood frozen, their brains unable to process what they were witnessing. Derek Walsh, the terror of underclassmen, the undisputed king of the senior class, was apologizing to the new girl. "Thank you, Derek," Maya said calmly. "I accept your apology." And that was it. Derek walked away, his friends Connor and Tyler trailing after him with expressions of utter bewilderment. The moment they were gone, the hallway exploded with conversation. From that day forward, the atmosphere at Jefferson High changed dramatically. Derek and his friends didn't just leave Maya alone. They seemed to actively avoid any behavior that might be construed as bullying. When Connor started to hassle a freshman about being in senior territory near the good vending machines, Derek shut him down with a look. When Tyler began mocking a sophomore's stutter, Derek told him to knock it off. The change was so dramatic that even teachers noticed. Mr. Anderson, the principal, called Maya to his office a week after the incident. "Miss Chen," he said, gesturing for her to sit. His office was exactly what you'd expect from a high school principal. Motivational posters, photos with graduating classes, a coffee mug that proclaimed him world's okayest principal. "Am I in trouble?" Maya asked. "No, not at all. I'm just curious. Derek Walsh has been a problem for 3 years. We've tried everything, detention, suspension, parent conferences, nothing worked. Then you show up, and within a week he's acting like a different person. Care to explain?" Maya considered her words carefully. Sometimes people just need to understand that their actions have consequences. Mr. Anderson leaned back in his chair, studying her. "Your mother told me about your background when she enrolled you. Pennsylvania state champion?" "Former champion. I don't compete anymore." "Why not?" Maya was quiet for a moment. "Competition was about proving something to myself, proving I wasn't a victim anymore. But I proved that a long time ago. Now I just want to be normal." "Normal," Mr. Anderson repeated with a slight smile. "I'm not sure that word applies to someone with your skills." A week after her confrontation with Derek, a group of girls approached Maya after school. They were led by Ashley Rodriguez, a junior with long dark hair and nervous energy that reminded Maya of a hummingbird. "Maya," Ashley began hesitantly, "we heard there are rumors." "What kind of rumors?" Maya asked, though she had a good idea. "That you know how to fight, like really fight." Maya nodded slowly. "The rumors are true." The girls exchanged glances and Ashley stepped forward. "We have a problem. Some guys from Westfield High have been harassing us at the bus stop. It happens off school property, so teachers can't do anything. And if we tell our parents, they'll just forbid us from going out at all." "Tell me everything," Maya said. The story that emerged was depressingly familiar. 5 boys from the neighboring school had decided that the Jefferson High bus stop was their hunting ground. They would wait there every day, making increasingly aggressive comments and attempts at unwanted contact. The day before, their leader, someone named Marcus Stone, had grabbed Ashley's wrist when she tried to walk away, holding it hard enough to leave bruises. "How many of them?" Maya asked. 5. All seniors, I think. Big guys." Maya considered the situation. 5 against 1 wasn't great odds, even for her. In sanctioned fights, it was one-on-one with rules and referees. Street fights were different, chaotic and dangerous. "After school today, go to the bus stop as usual," she said finally. "I'll be there." "What are you going to do?" Ashley asked, worry evident in her voice. "Whatever the situation requires." At 3:45 that afternoon, Maya positioned herself at the bus stop, sitting on the bench with a book open in her lap. She'd chosen her position carefully, back to the wall of the convenience store behind her, clear sight lines in both directions, multiple escape routes if needed. The book was just a prop. Her attention was entirely on her surroundings. Ashley and 3 other girls arrived a few minutes later, clustering together near the bus sign. Maya could see the tension in their shoulders, the way they kept checking the street. The Westfield boys showed up at 3:52, walking with the casual arrogance of those who had never faced real opposition. Their leader was obvious: tall, blonde, with a neck tattoo that looked like Chinese characters, probably meaning something completely different from what he thought. Marcus Stone moved with the confidence of someone used to getting his way through intimidation. "Well, well," Marcus announced as he approached the girls, "our favorite Jefferson princesses." "Leave us alone, Marcus," Ashley said, trying to inject strength into her voice. "Are we bothering you?" He smirked, moving closer. "We're just having a friendly chat, being neighborly." His friends laughed, spreading out to cut off escape routes. It was a practiced maneuver, something they'd done before. "By the way," Marcus continued, reaching out toward Ashley's face, "yesterday you ran off too quickly. Didn't even give me a chance to get to know you better." That's when Maya intervened. "Excuse me," she said, closing her book and standing. "Could you move, please? The bus will be here soon and you're blocking the sidewalk." Marcus turned, his eyes narrowing as he took in this new player. Maya had deliberately made herself look even smaller than usual, shoulders hunched, eyes downcast, everything about her body language screaming victim. "And who the hell are you?" Marcus asked. "I'm a student at Jefferson, and these girls are my friends." "I see." Marcus's smile turned predatory. "Well, why don't you run along, little girl? We're having a private conversation with your friends here." "I'm afraid that's not going to happen," Maya said, her voice still calm but carrying a different quality now, like the quiet before a storm. "They don't want to talk to you and you're going to leave them alone." Marcus took a step toward her, using his height advantage. He was easily 6 feet tall, and next to Maya's small frame, the difference was almost absurd. "Listen, little girl," he growled. "Stay out of this, or you'll regret it." "And what exactly will I regret?" Maya asked, shifting her stance slightly, weight moving to the balls of her feet. The other boys laughed, thinking it was hilarious that this tiny girl wasn't running away. One of them, stocky with gold teeth that caught the afternoon sun, moved behind Maya. "You know what, Marcus?" Gold Teeth said. "I like this one. She's got spirit. Maybe we should take her with us. Show her a good time." He reached out to grab Maya's shoulders from behind, his hands moving with the casual confidence of someone who had done this before. That was his first and last mistake. Maya didn't even turn around. She drove her left elbow backward in a short, vicious arc that caught Gold Teeth directly in the solar plexus. The strike was delivered with perfect technique, hip rotation adding power, the point of her elbow finding the exact spot that would cause maximum disruption to his breathing. Gold Teeth made a sound like air escaping from a punctured tire and dropped to his knees, his hands clutching his stomach, his face already turning an interesting shade of purple. "What the—" Marcus started, but Maya was already turning to face him. There was something in her eyes that made him take an involuntary step back. It wasn't rage or fear, it was the cold assessment of a predator evaluating prey. The look of someone who had been in real fights, who had faced opponents trying to hurt her and emerged victorious. "You have 2 minutes to get out of here," Maya said quietly. "That's the only warning you'll get." Marcus's face contorted with rage. His reputation, his entire identity was built on being the tough guy, the one nobody challenged. Being threatened by a girl who barely came up to his chest was intolerable. "You've lost your mind," he roared. "I'll crush you with one hand." He lunged forward, reaching for her throat with both hands, intending to lift her off the ground and shake her like a doll. It was a move that had worked for him before, terrifying and dominant. Maya moved like water, flowing around his attack. She stepped to the outside of his reaching arms, her left hand coming up to parry his right wrist while she pivoted on her left foot. His momentum carried him forward, off balance, and that's when she struck. Her right fist drove into his liver with devastating precision. The liver is one of the most pain-sensitive organs in the body, packed with nerve endings, and a proper liver shot can drop even professional fighters. Maya's strike was textbook perfect, angled slightly upward, targeting the organ beneath his floating ribs. Marcus's nervous system went haywire. The pain was immediate and overwhelming, like someone had inserted a white-hot knife into his side and twisted. His legs turned to jelly, and he stumbled forward, trying to catch himself. Maya didn't give him the chance to recover. She grabbed his right wrist, stepped under his arm, and executed a perfect judo throw, using his own weight and momentum to send him crashing onto the pavement. Before he could even process what had happened, her knee came up, catching him in the face with controlled force, enough to break his nose, not enough to cause permanent damage. Blood exploded from Marcus's nostrils, and he fell onto his back, his hands flying to his face. The entire sequence had taken less than 3 seconds. Maya turned to face the remaining 3 boys. Blood from Marcus's nose spattered across her knuckles. "Who's next?" They stood frozen, their brains unable to process what they had just witnessed. Their leader, the toughest guy they knew, was on the ground, bleeding. Gold Teeth was still on his knees, gasping for air, and the tiny girl who had done this was standing there, calm as could be, asking if anyone else wanted to try. "Wise choice," Maya said when none of them moved. "Now pick up your friends and leave. And if I ever see any of you near these girls again, if I hear even a whisper that you've been harassing anyone from Jefferson, we'll have a very different conversation, one that involves ambulances." The boys scrambled to help Marcus to his feet. He was conscious but dazed, blood still streaming from his nose, one hand pressed to his side where the liver shot had landed. Gold Teeth had managed to stand, though he was still hunched over, breathing in short, painful gasps. As they limped away, Marcus turned back, his face a mask of blood and humiliation. For a moment, Maya thought he might say something, make some threat to save face, but whatever he saw in her eyes made him think better of it. He turned and followed his friends, leaving drops of blood on the sidewalk. When they were out of sight, Ashley and her friends rushed over to Maya, their eyes wide with a mixture of awe and disbelief. That was incredible," Ashley breathed. "How did you do that?" "It's a long story," Maya said, wiping the blood from her knuckles with a tissue. "The important thing is, they won't bother you anymore." "But what if they come back with more people?" one of the other girls asked, her voice trembling. They won't, Maya said with certainty. Guys like Marcus only understand strength. Today he learned that size doesn't equal strength, and that lesson will stick. He'll probably tell people he got jumped by multiple attackers rather than admit a girl, half his size, destroyed him in seconds. The bus arrived then, and the girls climbed aboard, still chattering excitedly about what they had witnessed. Maya waited for the next bus, needing time to decompress, to let the adrenaline fade from her system. By the time she got home, her mother was already cooking dinner. The familiar smell of garlic and ginger filled the kitchen, and Maya felt some of the tension leave her shoulders. "How was school today?" Lisa asked, her standard greeting. "Better," Maya replied, and for the first time since they'd moved to Riverside, she actually meant it. Much better. Her mother turned to study her daughter's face. Something had changed in the past few days. The constant tension that Maya had carried since starting at Jefferson High was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like peace. "Did you make some new friends?" Lisa asked carefully. "Yeah," Maya said, thinking of Ashley and the other girls, of the way they had looked at her with admiration rather than fear. "Turns out there are some pretty good kids here." "I'm glad," Lisa said, and Maya could hear the relief in her voice. News of the bus stop incident spread through Jefferson High like wildfire. The story grew with each telling, becoming more elaborate and impossible. By some accounts, Maya had fought off 10 guys. In others, she had weapons. One particularly creative version had her doing backflips and wall runs like something out of a movie. But the core truth remained. Maya Chen had single-handedly defeated 5 boys from Westfield who had been terrorizing Jefferson students for months. Students from every grade began approaching Maya. Some just wanted to meet the girl who had become an instant legend. Others had their own stories of bullying, of feeling powerless, and they wanted to know if Maya could teach them to defend themselves. "Of course," Maya agreed when a group of freshman girls asked if she would show them some basic self-defense moves. "But we'll need a proper space and permission from the administration." Which is how Maya found herself in Principal Anderson's office for the second time, this time with a proposal. "You want to teach self-defense classes?" Mr. Anderson asked, his eyebrows raised. "There's clearly a need," Maya said. "The incident at the bus stop proves that our students are vulnerable off school property. If they knew even basic self-defense, they'd be safer and more confident." Mr. Anderson leaned back in his chair, considering. "I heard about what happened. 5 boys from Westfield. They were harassing our students. I intervened and sent one of them to the hospital with a broken nose. He attacked me first. I defended myself with appropriate force." Mr. Anderson was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I spoke to your mother yesterday. She told me more about your background. State champion is impressive, but she also mentioned you've trained in multiple disciplines, that you've been doing this since you were 12. That's correct. Why did you start training?" Maya hesitated, then decided on honesty. "I was bullied. 3 older girls cornered me after school, pushed me around, left bruises. I was terrified all the time, afraid to go to school, afraid to walk home. My mother enrolled me in martial arts so I could protect myself. And now you want to pass that on to others." "Everyone deserves to feel safe," Maya said simply. Mr. Anderson nodded slowly. "I'll arrange for you to use the auxiliary gym after school, 3 days a week to start. We'll call it a pilot program. If it goes well, we can make it official next semester." Within a week, Maya had 25 students signed up for her classes. They met Monday, Wednesday, and Friday in the small gym usually reserved for wrestling practice. The first lesson was not what anyone expected. "Before we learn any techniques," Maya said, addressing her students who sat in a circle on the mats, "we need to talk about the psychology of violence." She spent the entire first session discussing situational awareness, de-escalation tactics, and the legal implications of self-defense. She taught them to recognize pre-assault indicators, how to use verbal commands to create witnesses, how to position themselves in public spaces to avoid being cornered. The best fight, she told them, is the one that never happens. Physical techniques are the last resort, not the first response. When they did begin learning physical techniques, Maya started with the basics: how to make a proper fist, how to generate power from the hips, where to strike for maximum effect with minimum force. She taught them about vulnerable points on the human body, demonstrated how leverage could overcome strength, showed them that fighting smart was more important than fighting hard. Derek Walsh showed up to the third class. The room went silent when he walked in. Everyone knew the history between him and Maya, had heard various versions of what had happened in the parking lot. Some thought Maya would refuse to teach him. Others thought it might be a trap, that Derek was there to cause trouble. "Is it okay if I join?" Derek asked, and Maya could hear the genuine uncertainty in his voice. "Everyone's welcome," Maya said simply. "Find a space." Derek turned out to be one of her most dedicated students. He already had strength and athletic ability, but he lacked technique and discipline. Maya taught him to control his power, to think before acting, to see violence as a last resort rather than a first response. About a month after the incident with Marcus Stone, Maya received news that he had been arrested for assault. Not for what happened at the bus stop. None of the Westfield boys had reported that incident, too embarrassed to admit they'd been defeated by a single small girl. Instead, Marcus had attacked a girl from another district, someone without Maya's skills to defend herself. This time he had gone too far, leaving the girl with serious injuries. He was facing actual prison time. But Marcus came from money. His father, David Stone, was a successful businessman who owned several car dealerships. He hired the best lawyers money could buy, and they immediately went on the offensive, looking for any angle to get the charges reduced or dismissed. One of their strategies was to paint Marcus as a victim himself, a troubled young man who had been traumatized by a violent assault. They filed a civil suit against Maya, claiming that her unprovoked attack at the bus stop had caused Marcus psychological damage that led to his later actions. The lawsuit was absurd, but it had to be answered. Maya found herself once again in Principal Anderson's office, this time with her mother and a lawyer the school district had provided. "They're claiming I attacked their son without provocation," Maya said, reading through the complaint. "That's a complete lie." "We know," the lawyer, Mrs. Patterson, said. "But they're counting on it being your word against his. 5 boys from Westfield versus 1 girl from Jefferson." "It's not just my word," Maya said. "Ashley and her friends were there. They saw everything." "Teenage witnesses aren't always considered reliable," Mrs. Patterson warned, "and the boys will all back each other up." Maya thought for a moment, then said, "The convenience store behind the bus stop has security cameras." Mrs. Patterson's eyes lit up. "Are you sure?" "I noticed them when I was choosing where to sit. There's one covering the front entrance that should have captured everything." It took a subpoena to get the footage, but when Mrs. Patterson finally watched it, she couldn't help but smile. The video clearly showed Marcus and his friends approaching the girls, showed gold teeth moving to grab Maya from behind, showed Marcus lunging at her with obvious aggressive intent. It also showed Maya's response, controlled, precise, using only the force necessary to stop the attack. The civil suit was dismissed within a week, and the video became evidence in Marcus's criminal trial. But David Stone wasn't done. His son was facing serious charges, and he blamed Maya for everything. If she hadn't humiliated Marcus, hadn't damaged his ego so severely, maybe he wouldn't have felt the need to prove his dominance with another girl. It was twisted logic, but grief and anger rarely follow rational paths. One evening, About a week before Marcus's trial was scheduled to begin, Maya was walking home from a late training session. She had stayed after her regular class to work with a few advanced students, and it was nearly 8 p.m. by the time she left school. The street was quiet, most people inside having dinner. Maya walked with her usual awareness, noting the parked cars, the shadows between buildings, the sound of her own footsteps on the sidewalk. She sensed him before she saw him, that primitive awareness that comes from years of training. Someone was following her, matching her pace, staying just far enough back to avoid being obvious. Maya turned the corner onto a well-lit commercial street, using the reflection in store windows to get a look at her follower. Her blood went cold when she recognized him. David Stone was a larger version of his son, 6'4" and built like someone who had played football in college and never stopped working out. But where Marcus had the swagger of youth, David had the dangerous intensity of someone with nothing left to lose. And he was clearly drunk, his gait slightly unsteady, his face flushed even in the dim light. Maya quickened her pace, pulling out her phone to call for help. But before she could dial, David Stone called out, "Hey, you, stop right there." Maya turned, making sure she was in full view of the streetlights and the security camera she had spotted on the corner. "Mr. Stone," she said, keeping her voice calm despite her racing heart, "you shouldn't be here." "You ruined my boy," he slurred, stumbling closer. "He was a good kid until you came along. Had a scholarship lined up, full ride to state. Now he's facing prison because of you." "Your son made his own choices," Maya said, backing slowly toward the more populated part of the street. "He's responsible for his actions." "He was fine until you humiliated him," Stone roared. "You destroyed his confidence, made him feel like he had to prove something." Maya could smell the whiskey on his breath now, see the tears in his bloodshot eyes. This wasn't just a drunk looking for a fight. This was a father destroyed by his son's actions, looking for someone to blame besides himself. "Mr. Stone," she said gently, "you need to go home. Sleep it off. Don't make this worse." "Worse?" He laughed bitterly. "How could it be worse? My son's going to prison. My wife won't stop crying. Our name is ruined in this town. All because some little girl decided to play hero." He lunged at her then, his massive hands reaching for her throat. Even drunk, he was fast, and his reach was enormous. But Maya had been preparing for this moment from the second she recognized him. She ducked under his grasping hands, pivoted on her left foot, and drove her palm into his solar plexus. The strike was measured, enough to stop him, not enough to cause lasting damage. He doubled over, gasping, but his rage kept him moving. He swung a wild haymaker that would have taken her head off if it connected. Maya leaned back, the fist passing inches from her face, then stepped in close, inside his reach, where his long arms were a disadvantage. She grabbed his wrist, turned her hip into his body, and executed a perfect hip throw. David Stone's feet left the ground, and he crashed onto the sidewalk with enough force to knock the wind out of him. Before he could get up, Maya had her phone out, calling 911. "This is Maya Chen. I'm at the corner of 5th and Main. David Stone just attacked me. He's drunk and may be injured from the fall. Please send police and an ambulance." She stayed on the line with the dispatcher, keeping an eye on Stone, who was groaning on the sidewalk, until the police arrived. The entire incident had been captured by the security camera, and with Maya's calm handling of the situation, it was clear she had acted in self-defense. David Stone was arrested for assault and public intoxication. The incident actually helped Marcus's criminal case in an unexpected way. The judge took into consideration the family dysfunction and agreed to a plea deal that included counseling and community service rather than prison time. After the incident with David Stone, Maya expected backlash, some form of retaliation. Instead, she found herself with an unexpected reputation as someone who could handle any situation with calm precision. The story had spread through town, how she had taken down a full-grown man without seriously injuring him, how she had immediately called for help rather than leaving him injured on the street. Parents began approaching her, asking if she would teach private classes for their children. The school board officially approved her self-defense program, even providing a small budget for equipment. Local newspapers ran feature stories about the teenage girl teaching others to protect themselves. But the attention wasn't what mattered to Maya. What mattered were the changes she saw in her students. There was Jennifer, a sophomore who had been sexually assaulted the previous year and was afraid to leave her house. After 2 months of classes, she was walking to school again, her head held high. There was Marcus, a different Marcus, a skinny freshman who had been stuffed into lockers so many times he had developed claustrophobia. Maya taught him how to prevent being grabbed, how to create space, how to project confidence that made him less of a target. There was even Derek, who had transformed from a bully into a protector. He had started escorting younger students who were afraid to walk home alone, using his size for good rather than intimidation. One afternoon, as Maya was cleaning up after a particularly intense class, Ashley approached her. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure," Maya said, coiling up a jump rope. "Do you ever regret it? Not hiding who you are from the start?" Maya paused, considering the question. "I spent so much energy trying to be invisible, trying to fit in. But that's not living. It's just existing. When Derek forced me to defend myself, it was almost a relief. I could finally stop pretending. But didn't it make things harder? All the attention, the lawsuit, Mr. Stone attacking you? Those things would have happened anyway in different forms. Bullies don't stop because you hide from them. They stop when someone stands up to them." Maya sat down on the mat and Ashley joined her. "The only thing I regret is not being myself from the beginning. I could have helped people sooner." As the school year progressed, Maya's program grew. The district allocated a dedicated space for her classes, a room that could be set up with permanent mats and equipment. She brought in guest instructors, including Sensei Rodriguez, who drove down from Philadelphia to conduct a special seminar. "I'm proud of you," he told her after watching her teach. "You've taken everything I taught you and made it your own. These kids are lucky to have you." "I'm just paying it forward," Maya said. "Someone helped me when I needed it. Now it's my turn." The transformation at Jefferson High was remarkable. Bullying incidents dropped by 70%. Students walked with more confidence. There was a sense of community that hadn't existed before, born from the knowledge that they were looking out for each other. Even the relationship with Westfield High improved. After Marcus's arrest and trial, the administration there cracked down on their own bullying problems. They even asked Maya to conduct a seminar for their students, which she agreed to despite some initial reservations. As senior year approached, Maya found herself being courted by colleges. Not for fighting, she'd made it clear she was done with competition, but for her leadership, her community service, her academic achievements that had flourished once she stopped spending all her energy trying to hide. She chose to study psychology with a focus on adolescent development. She wanted to understand not just the physical aspects of self-defense, but the mental and emotional components that turned victims into survivors and survivors into thrivers. Her essay for college applications was about her journey from frightened 12-year-old to confident young woman, about the power of standing up not just for yourself, but for others. She wrote about Derek, how their confrontation had changed both of them. She even got him to write a supporting letter, which he did with surprising eloquence. "Maya Chen taught me the most important lesson of my life," Derek wrote, "that real strength isn't about dominating others. It's about having the power to hurt someone and choosing not to. It's about protecting those who can't protect themselves." She could have destroyed me that day in the parking lot. Instead, she gave me a chance to become a better person. I'll be grateful for that for the rest of my life. At graduation, Maya was chosen to give the valedictorian speech. She stood at the podium, looking out at her classmates, their families, the teachers who had supported her journey. In the audience, she could see Ashley and her friends, Jennifer standing tall and proud, Marcus, the former victim, now planning to study criminal justice, Derek heading to college on an academic scholarship rather than an athletic one. 4 years ago, Maya began, her voice carrying clearly through the auditorium, I walked into this school hoping to be invisible. I thought if I could just blend in, avoid attention, I could have a normal high school experience. She paused, letting her words settle. But I learned something important. Normal isn't about fitting in. It's about being yourself, even when that's scary. It's about standing up for what's right, even when you stand alone. It's about using whatever gifts you have to make the world a little bit better. She talked about the power of community, the importance of looking out for each other. She talked about transformation, how the biggest bully can become the strongest advocate for change. She talked about courage, not the absence of fear, but action in spite of it. Each of us has power, she concluded. Maybe it's physical strength, maybe it's intelligence, maybe it's creativity or compassion or the ability to make others laugh. Whatever your power is, I challenge you to use it. Don't hide it, don't be ashamed of it, and most importantly, don't use it to hurt others. Use it to lift them up, to protect them, to make their lives a little bit easier or safer or happier. She raised her diploma above her head, a gesture that had become her signature. We're all heading in different directions now, some to college, some to work, some to service. But wherever you go, remember what we learned here. Remember that one person can make a difference. Remember that standing up for others is the highest form of courage. And remember that sometimes the quiet ones, the ones you least expect, can change everything. The standing ovation lasted 5 full minutes. After the ceremony, as families gathered for photos and tearful goodbyes, a woman Maya didn't recognize approached her. "Excuse me, are you Maya Chen?" "Yes," Maya said, instantly alert, but not sensing threat. "My name is Sarah Williams. My daughter goes to Westfield High. She was the girl Marcus Stone attacked." Maya's stomach dropped. She hadn't known the victim's name, had deliberately avoided learning details about the case. "I wanted to thank you," Sarah continued, and Maya saw tears in her eyes. "If you hadn't stopped Marcus at that bus stop, if you hadn't shown him there were consequences, he might have hurt my daughter even worse. The prosecutor said the video of what you did to him helped show a pattern of violence, made it easier to get him to accept the plea deal." "I'm sorry for what happened to your daughter," Maya said. "How is she doing?" "She's in therapy, getting better every day. And you know what's helping? Knowing that someone stood up to him, knowing that he didn't get away with it. She wants to take self-defense classes when she's ready." "Send her to me," Maya said immediately. "Whenever she's ready, I'll teach her personally." Sarah hugged her then, a desperate, grateful embrace that said more than words could express. As Maya packed up her room that night preparing for college, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here. 4 years ago, she had arrived in Riverside as a frightened girl hiding her true self. Now she was leaving as a confident young woman who had changed an entire community. Her phone buzzed with a message from Sensei Rodriguez. "Saw the video of your graduation speech. You've become everything I hoped you would be and more. The student has surpassed the teacher." Maya smiled, looking at the photos covering her wall. There was one of her first self-defense class, all nervous freshmen who didn't know how to make a fist. There was Ashley and her friends at the bus stop, free from fear. There was Derek at his first class, humble and eager to learn. There was even a picture from the Westfield seminar, former enemies becoming allies in the fight against bullying. But the photo that meant the most was one her mother had taken without her knowing. It showed Maya in the gym, surrounded by students, demonstrating a technique. But what struck her about the image was her expression. She looked happy, fulfilled, at peace with herself in a way she never had in Philadelphia. A knock on her door interrupted her thoughts. It was her mother holding 2 cups of tea. "Thought you might want to talk," Lisa said, settling on the bed. "About what?" "About how proud I am of you. About how wrong I was to ask you to hide who you are." "Mom, you were trying to protect me." "I was trying to protect myself," Lisa admitted. "I was so afraid of losing you like I lost your father. I thought if you didn't fight, you couldn't get hurt. But I was wrong. Hiding hurt you more than any physical fight could have." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, sipping their tea. "You know what the best part is?" Maya said eventually. "What's that?" "I'm not afraid anymore, not of being hurt, not of being myself, not of the future. For the first time in my life, I'm not afraid." Her mother squeezed her hand. "That's all I ever wanted for you." The next morning, half the town seemed to gather at the train station to see Maya off to college. Her students made a banner that read, "Our Hero," which made her laugh and cry at the same time. Derek was there with his parents, who thanked her for the change in their son. Ashley brought her a self-defense manual she had made, filled with notes from Maya's classes and drawings of techniques. Even Principal Anderson showed up, telling her she always had a home at Jefferson High if she wanted to come back and teach. As the train pulled away, Maya watched Riverside disappear into the distance, but she knew she wasn't really leaving. Part of her would always be in that small gym, teaching frightened kids to be brave. Part of her would always be at that bus stop, standing between bullies and their victims. Part of her would always be in that parking lot, giving a scared bully a chance to change. College brought new challenges and opportunities. Maya threw herself into her studies, particularly interested in the psychology of violence and victim recovery. She started a self-defense club on campus that quickly became one of the most popular student organizations. She worked with campus security to improve safety protocols, conducted seminars on consent and bystander intervention, and continued to transform lives through teaching. But she never forgot Riverside. Every summer, she returned to run intensive training camps. Every graduation, she was there to watch her former students walk across the stage. When Jennifer finally felt ready to learn self-defense, Maya drove back on weekends to teach her personally. Years passed. Maya earned her degree in psychology, then her master's in counseling with a specialization in trauma recovery. She could have gone anywhere, done anything. Multiple universities wanted her for their doctoral programs. Private security firms offered her lucrative contracts. Even the UFC reached out, wondering if she might want to return to competition. But at 27, Maya knew exactly what she wanted to do. She returned to Riverside and opened the Chen Center for Youth Empowerment. It started small, just Maya and 2 volunteer instructors in a rented strip mall space. But word spread quickly. Parents who remembered what she had done at Jefferson High brought their children. Former students, now adults, brought their younger siblings. Even Derek, who had become a social worker specializing in at-risk youth, sent kids her way. The center grew. Within 2 years, Maya had a staff of 10, including psychologists, social workers, and martial arts instructors. They offered not just self-defense classes, but counseling, tutoring, and mentorship programs. The motto, painted on the wall in large letters, read, "Strength through courage, power through compassion." One day, a small, frightened 12-year-old girl walked into the center. She had bruises on her arms, and that hollow look Maya recognized all too well. Her mother stood behind her, desperate and hopeful in equal measure. "Can you help her?" the mother asked. Maya knelt down to the girl's level, seeing herself 15 years ago, scared and broken, but with a spark of determination that just needed to be nurtured. "What's your name?" Maya asked gently. "Sophie," the girl whispered. "Well, Sophie, I want you to know something. Right now you might feel weak and scared, but inside you is a warrior waiting to wake up. I'm going to help you find her." Sophie looked up then, and Maya saw that spark flicker to life. "How do you know?" Sophie asked. Maya smiled, standing and offering her hand. "Because someone once helped me find mine. Now it's my turn to pass it on." As she led Sophie to the training area, Maya thought about the path that had brought her here. From terrified victim to state champion, from hidden warrior to community leader, from frightened girl to confident woman. She thought about Derek, who now ran anti-bullying programs in schools across the state. About Ashley, who had become a prosecutor specializing in cases of violence against women. About Jennifer, who had not only recovered, but was now teaching her own self-defense classes. About all the lives that had been changed because one day, a bully had pushed her too far and awakened something that couldn't be put back to sleep. The center's walls were covered with photos and letters from former students. There were newspaper clippings about kids who had stood up to bullies, prevented assaults, saved lives. There were wedding invitations from students who had found confidence and love. There were graduation announcements, acceptance letters, success stories of every kind. But the item that meant the most to Maya was framed in her office. It was a simple note, written in Derek's formerly terrible handwriting. "Maya, you asked me once if I regretted what happened in the parking lot. I said yes at the time, but I was wrong. That day was the best thing that ever happened to me. Not because you beat me up, but because you showed me I could be better. You gave me a second chance when you could have destroyed me. You taught me that real strength is in lifting others up, not knocking them down. Every kid I help, every bully I reform, every victim I empower, it all goes back to that moment when you stood over me and chose mercy over vengeance. Thank you for being the quiet champion who changed everything. Derek." As Maya watched Sophie tentatively try her first punch on the heavy bag, she smiled. The cycle continued. Another quiet champion was being born, another warrior was waking up, and somewhere out there, future bullies had no idea what they were about to face. The quiet ones, the ones you least expect, they're the ones who change the world. Not with noise or violence, but with courage, compassion, and the unshakable belief that everyone deserves to feel safe. Maya had learned long ago that you can't hide from who you are. You can only embrace it, refine it, and use it to light the way for others walking the same dark path you once traveled. And in a small town in Pennsylvania, in a center dedicated to empowering youth, that light burned bright and steady, a beacon for every frightened child who needed to learn that they were stronger than they knew.